Greetings, chess friends. Today we have two games with a rare and beautiful pawn structure. We're going to see a fun one today. I was debating which game to start with, but let's jump into the GM versus GM game first. And I think the second game is even better, more enjoyable to watch, but at the highest level, this one is really nice. This was played by David Howell. You can see there with the white pieces, and Peter Hein Nielsen, both chess grandmasters, of course, and kind of notable personalities, let's say. Okay, let's jump into the game. This is a Ruy Lopez exchange variation, which I quite like. There's a number of moves here for black. Bishop g4, f6, kind of a strange move, but a very good one in this position. All trying to deal with the problem of this pawn. Knight e7 doesn't deal with this problem at all. It's very interesting. And when white takes, queen d4. That's how he meant to deal with the problem of that pawn hanging. So presumably white will win this pawn back, but when queen h5 comes, all of a sudden the threat is pretty serious. Queen takes f7. Not quite mate, but that typical pattern. g6, queen g5. So really interesting. Again, white is holding on to that extra pawn. Bishop g7, knight d3. f5. This becomes a wild game. I assume this had all been played. There's some even really nice offerings coming up here. c5, and then Chess.com loves it. b3. Brilliant. I would imagine this was not created at the board, but this move was just giving the rook, and he doesn't take it, of course, b6. Let's just take a look. If you take this rook, this is a really nice idea for players a little newer to chess to see and maybe try to use in your games. Taking a free rook, that should be game over if you get to keep it. But in this case, knight c3 actually just buries the queen in there. Notice the queen just cannot escape here. It's entombed, as they say. And the next move, no matter what black does, is going to be their bishop to b2. Black will take the rook, the biggest piece you can capture. And overall, after the dust has settled really with the queen for the two rooks, in the corners, not very active. Actually, white is much more active and better in this game. So that didn't occur in the game, but a really cool moment just offering here, brilliant move, offering the rook. b6, bishop to b2 anyway, natural move, of course. And here we start to get the shape of the game after c4, bishop f5. A surprising counterattack. Usually in chess, this is where you can be caught off guard or surprised. When you attack something, this is when the positions get most out of control, let's say, and someone attacks something else. That usually sets off a chain of events of chaos, right? One piece is attacked. Oh, yeah, he has to move the knight. Okay, then I'm going to go here. And all of a sudden, he just doesn't and plays a surprising counter. Well, in this case, it's actually white who has the last laugh because white is willing to go further and give away material. Knight takes c5. Since we both have piece hanging, we have this sort of desperado giving the knight because we're about to take one. And you start to see a very nice pawn structure in the center, protected, connected for white. Bishop d3. Now, at this moment, maybe it was where the calculation was a little better for white, was understanding that these pawns are worth more than the material. Again, usually when there's an attack, the player with the black pieces would say, okay, I'm going to threaten that rook, and then the rook has to move, only move, rook f2. This can be a mistake in calculating because you're just assuming they'll move the rook. He plays knight c3, brilliant move, and castles. Of course, we have to ask, what if he takes the rook? The cool move here is actually king takes f1, and you might ask, what about this pawn, which is just hanging? Really, let's say queen takes. It's actually even better for white immediately. Rook e1 wins material. Okay, can you just take with the bishop instead? Here, knight e4. And you can feel the pieces, 1, 2, this knight hitting the queen, swarming for white. And here, let's see. This is absolutely, if you take, game over. Knight f6 is check. That's a nice tactic. And you cannot capture the knight because you are pinned to the king. Any move, of course, queen takes queen. Okay, wow. So white really understood deeply here. Knight c3 is a wonderful move. Castles, black probably understood at that moment I cannot take. Knight e4, threatening the queen, and knight c5. Again, really just disregarding this rook in favor of the two pawns. We did a lesson a few videos back about connected pawns on the 5th rank or 6th rank being better than certain pieces. Here, finally takes it. King takes again. Why not queen takes? We need the queen to guard these center pawns. So king takes. Ask yourself, is the king in danger? How do I know, Chris, if the king's in danger? How do I know? I don't know what they're going to do. Look at the pieces. Are these rooks going to get to your king? Is this bishop? Is the queen? Nope. We're okay. White is okay. So if you're not sure, just going to ask yourself questions. What pieces can get to my king? Make checks, make threats around? Not really any. Here we go. Queen e4, and it's all about these center pawns. Remember I said we're going to have a rare and peculiar pawn structure today. Look at this. d4. Queen takes queen. F takes e4. Black resigns. What? Black resigns? I thought we were just getting started. This is kind of the key moment of the middle game. Black resigns. Okay, I'll remind you, these are top grandmasters, top 100 in the world, roughly. At this moment in the game, black can barely do anything. Black is actually down material. Count it up. How do we count so quickly? How do you know? Okay, you want to kind of say, just a quick note about counting material. I like to think of the extras. So what do we have extra? Black has an extra rook, right? White has an extra knight and 3 extra pawns. White has all of their pawns, so let's just pick 3 pawns. So that right there is 6 points. Knight, 3, 4, 5, 6, versus just a rook. So we have an extra point of material, but the position of these pawns is just tremendous. Of course, these pawns are also weak here. Let me do something really quickly. Just flip it upside down for you. How do you feel when someone plays pawn takes queen and you're black, your turn? You can feel the difficulty, right? The pawns here just cover too much. Maybe a quick note that when pawns are guarding things, it is the most sturdy it can be, right? 2 pawns guarding something, that's as sturdy as anything can be protected in chess. And you can never take or sacrifice. The pieces are really stuck. Control the center, and you control the game. Okay, the next game here is by lesser known or unknown players, but actually is a fantastic game. And black, I must say, is played quite strong. Here's kind of a really cool stretched out Dutch defense. Well, all right. White plays d4 right away, and we have this Dutch in the traditional sense. The Dutch usually does give some interesting counter chances for black. Definitely a fighting opening. Has that Sicilian type of feel where you counter your opponent in the center. Okay, c6, speaking of the center, is fighting for the center. Castles, bishop d7. You always have to be careful in these type of openings where the pawns are all locked on one color square. Which bishops you trade or keep or where you place them. The bishops are always, I would say, a little more important to pay attention to in these type of games. When I say these type of games, I mean where the pawns are all standing on one color. Bishop e3, knight e4. Okay, black has taken control of the e4 square. Remember, chess is all about the center, so pawn is guarding it, knight is guarding it. This knight is standing on that square. Really, and we saw in the last game, if you're standing on those squares, you control them. So there's 2 ways to control a square. You can be pointing at it. You can own it by staring at it, a rook, a bishop. Or you can be standing right on that square. So stand in the center is kind of the traditional way, pawns in the center. And then the hyper-modern school of chess came about, and they said, no, you can also just point at the center with bishop g7, these Grunfeld-type games. Here we go. This was maybe a little miscalculation. Again, I don't know the skill level or rating of these players, but maybe a little miscalculation here was knight d4. When you capture here, really taking back and then rook c8, black just starts to have a great position. This bishop is great. The knight is probably the best, most centralized piece. And now the rook, completely open file. Really, black is looking great. So he played knight d4. e5. Really nice move. Perhaps he was assuming pawn takes pawn would come and then maybe some sort of capture check, or not sure what he was hoping for here. But when e5 lands, now you can start to see the beginnings of this pawn structure. The pawns have this wonderful characteristic in chess that everybody has to run away. They're the weakest piece. So when every piece is attacked, they have to run. A pawn threatens a knight, has to run. Bishop, run. Queen, everyone has to run. Rook c8. The power of the pin really should not be understated or underestimated. You need to be thinking about pins, one of the simplest chess tactics. But when you start attacking the pinned pieces, it's just devastating. Here, you can definitely see the outline of this pawn square that we saw in the last game. Absolutely fantastic. I can't think of a time I've ever had this. Maybe some random game long since forgotten, but here we go. Bishop takes e4, f takes e4, and look at this pawn structure, a thing of beauty. One thing I should mention to you all, as a more experienced player once told me, just treat en passant like any other move, right? Everyone's excited when they see en passant. Okay, not the case here, no en passant possible. But the reason I said that is, even though you have a fancy pawn structure, you should just treat this like any other move. What I mean to say is, if d takes e4 was the best move, but it's not a cool structure, a square, you need to be playing the best moves. So f takes e4 is the best move, and we're not just doing it to be fancy. Okay, keep that in mind when you have sort of a poetic move to make, or something really cool, or a queen sack, but it's not the best move. Just make it a habit to try to play the best moves. That might sound like kind of obvious advice, but sometimes we go a little haywire when you're playing chess and you forget the fundamentals. Okay, rook d1, queen b6. That's threatening the bishop, and rook takes knight. So white is in big trouble here. This game is completely gone off the rails. Queen d2 guards the bishop, bishop f8, and white resigns. There's no move here to save the material. You're just losing another minor piece. So these pawns, again, just cannot be budged. It was just close-ish game. It was a close game right around to this moment. And after queen c2 really kind of threw the game away. But that all compounded after rook c8 here and d5. That's where it started to go, expanding in the center. A lot of players ask, after you've developed and castled, oh, I know those things, what do you do? When the middle game starts, what do you do? Try to expand. If you have in the center some control, you can move the pawns forward. Maybe it's a king side attack. Maybe you're playing with white on the queen pawn openings and you can play on the queen side more, or certain openings have certain kind of blueprints, let's say. Expand in the center. And the finale was, wow, this quadrant of pawns here. That is just something fantastic. But more than the kind of rarity that it is, I like that it really accentuates the power of the center. It's a lesson. It teaches you, if you own the center, and this is the most dominant way, you own the chessboard, okay? He who controls the center controls the game. So really something special. I like these two games, and hopefully that kind of drills down those fundamentals for you. Chess is all about the center, and will always be. If anyone had to ask me one piece of advice, how do you get better at chess? Control the center. Like that's more important than almost everything. So, all right. Thanks again, folks, for the watch, and let's keep it rolling here. Hope you're enjoying these videos. Send any feedback you have or message. Happy to respond personally. So thanks so much.